Beneath the misty pines and rolling ridges of North Carolina lies a hidden history, one not found in textbooks or tourist brochures. It's etched into stone, whispered in legends, and rooted deep in soil older than memory. From vanishing colonies to glowing mountain lights, from bent trees that point the way to ancient carvings now drowned in lakes, this land holds secrets that refuse to die. Step into the shadows with us and uncover the mysteries the Carolina wilds still guard. The lost colony of Roanoke. In the summer of 1587, more than 100 English settlers arrived on Roanoke Island, just off the coast of what is now North Carolina. It was meant to be the first permanent English colony in the New World. Among them were men, women, and children, all eager to start new lives in a strange and uncharted land. But what was intended to be a bold new chapter in history would instead become one of America's oldest and most enduring mysteries. John White, an artist and map maker, led the expedition and was appointed governor of the fledgling colony. Among the colonists was his own daughter, Eleanor Dare, who soon gave birth to the first English child born in the New World, Virginia Dare. Spirits were high despite the challenges they faced. The settlers built their homes, began clearing land, and tried to establish relations with the local native tribes. But tensions were already rising. The settlers quickly realized that food was scarce, relations with some native groups were strained, and their supplies would not last long. Only weeks after arriving, John White made a difficult decision. He would return to England to secure additional support and supplies. He left behind his family, the colonists, and the fragile beginnings of a new community with the promise to return swiftly. But fate had other plans. When White arrived in England, he found a country on the brink of war with Spain. Queen Elizabeth had ordered that all available ships be used to defend against the Spanish Armada, and no voyage to the New World was permitted. White was stuck. Months passed, then years. It wasn't until 1590, 3 years after he had departed Roanoke, that John White was finally able to return. He arrived on Roanoke Island on August 18, 1590, what should have been his granddaughter Virginia's third birthday. Instead of a warm reunion, he found an eerie silence. The colony had vanished. There were no signs of struggle, no bones, no graves, no structures, just overgrown land, and one baffling clue: the word Croatan carved into a post of the palisade. Nearby, the letters Psi-R-O were found etched into a tree. This was no random act. White had instructed the colonists before he left. If they ever had to relocate, they should carve the name of their destination into a visible place. If they left under duress or danger, they should add a cross beneath the word, but there was no cross. White took this to mean they had moved to Croatoan Island, now known as Hatteras Island, about 50 miles south, but rough seas, dwindling supplies, and a damaged ship prevented his crew from continuing the search. Heartbroken, John White was forced to sail back to England. He never saw his family again, and thus began centuries of speculation. Where did the colonists go? Were they killed by hostile tribes? Did they assimilate into friendly native communities? Were they lost at sea, or victims of disease or starvation? The most popular theory is that the colonists relocated to Croatoan Island and were absorbed by the Croatan tribe. This idea is supported by early accounts from explorers in the 1600s, who reported seeing Native Americans with gray eyes and European features. Later settlers also told of tribes who claimed descent from white ancestors, though no definitive link was ever proven. Others believe the colonists tried to head inland, up the Chowan or Roanoke rivers, in search of a better location. Some historians speculate they may have made it to the Chesapeake Bay, the location of their original intended settlement, but were ultimately wiped out by the Powhatan Confederacy. There's even a theory, whispered by some, that the colonists were victims of supernatural forces, a cursed land, an ancient spirit, or something else entirely. While these tales are largely rooted in folklore, the mystery's sheer persistence has made room for such legends to grow. In the centuries that followed, treasure hunters, archaeologists, and historians have all tried to crack the case. In the 1930s, a series of stones were allegedly discovered, now known as the Dare Stones, each carved with a message supposedly from Eleanor Dare. One stone tells of the death of Virginia, and most of the colonists due to sickness and conflict with natives. However, most scholars today consider the Dare Stones a hoax, possibly fabricated to cash in on the growing public fascination with the mystery. More recently, archaeologists have turned to science for answers. Excavations on Hatteras Island have uncovered artifacts of both English and native origin, including a 16th century rapier hilt, slate writing tablets, and parts of European-style guns. These items suggest that at least some of the Roanoke colonists may have made it there. Another promising dig site called Site X, located inland in Bertie County, has yielded Tudor-period pottery shards and other clues. This has led some to theorize that the colonists split up, with some going south to Croatoan and others heading inland. Still, no burial site, no definitive written account, and no unbroken chain of evidence has emerged to settle the question. The mystery of Roanoke continues to haunt us, not only because of its unanswered questions, but because it sits at the intersection of history, myth, and identity. It was the first English settlement in what would become the United States, a symbol of hope and ambition, swallowed by an unforgiving wilderness. What happened to the lost colony of Roanoke? Perhaps the answer lies buried beneath the sands of Hatteras, or under the waters of Albemarle Sound. Perhaps it lives on in the DNA of local tribes. Or perhaps the silence of Roanoke Island is its final word, a vanished echo of an impossible dream, carved into the bark of a tree. Judicola Rock. Hidden deep in the rolling hills of Jackson County, North Carolina, lies a stone unlike any other. Massive and mottled with strange symbols, the Judicola Rock is a slab of soapstone about 22 feet long and 14 feet wide, etched with hundreds of ancient petroglyphs that defy simple explanation. It's not just the largest petroglyph site in North Carolina, it's one of the most mysterious in all of eastern North America. To the casual observer, Judicola Rock might look like the canvas of long-forgotten artists, a chaotic array of lines, circles, and indentations. But to those who have studied it, and to those who grew up with its legends, the rock speaks of something older, deeper, and far stranger. The Cherokee people have long told stories about this rock. In their lore, it is connected to a supernatural being named Judicola, an enormous, slanted-eyed giant who was said to control the winds, the rain, and the game animals of the mountains. He wasn't just powerful, he was sacred, guardian-like, a keeper of order between humans and the spirit world. According to one version of the tale, Judicola leapt down from the sky, landing on the rock with such force that he left behind deep grooves and seven-fingered handprints. The markings we see today are in the Cherokee view, the imprint of a god, not just art, but a physical message carved into the earth. Judicola's name, derived from the Cherokee Tsulkalu, means something like "he has them slanting," referring to his slanted eyes. He was a being of balance and boundary, often appearing in places where humans needed reminding of their limits. The Judicola Rock was believed to mark the heart of his domain, a sacred site that humans should respect but not claim. Yet, despite its legendary roots, the rock remains largely unexplained by modern science. More than 1,500 separate carvings have been cataloged on its surface. Geometric shapes, strange humanoid figures, spirals, cup marks, and animal-like forms. Some symbols appear familiar, others are entirely alien. Archaeologists have dated the oldest markings to possibly 3,000 years ago, while others may have been added as recently as 300 years ago. Who carved them? Why? Were they sacred messages, boundary markers, celestial charts? One prevailing theory is that the rock was a ceremonial site, a gathering place for spiritual or social rituals among prehistoric tribes. Its proximity to a natural spring and its visibility in the landscape may have made it an ideal location for such gatherings. Some researchers believe the symbols may record clan information, territorial claims, or even mythological events. But there are anomalies. Certain symbols on the rock, such as concentric circles and grid patterns, have parallels in ancient European and Asian petroglyphs, leading some fringe theorists to propose wild ideas about pre-Columbian contact with other civilizations. These claims remain speculative at best, but they do underscore just how strange and globally puzzling the carvings really are. The placement of the markings also suggests they were not made all at once. Some are deeply cut, while others are shallow. Overlapping lines hint at a site reused and revisited across generations, possibly by multiple cultures, each adding their own layer of meaning. In that sense, the Judaculla Rock may be not just a relic of the past, but a palimpsest, a living document etched in stone over centuries. But what might these markings truly mean? Some researchers have suggested a connection to the ancient Mississippian culture, known for its mound-building societies and complex belief systems. If true, the carvings could be tied to creation stories, fertility rites, or astronomical observations. Others believe the symbols might map local topography, perhaps a lost trail system, waterways, or hunting grounds. Some even see in the layout of the carvings a kind of proto-writing system, a symbolic language that has yet to be deciphered. And then there's the possibility that we're looking at something more abstract, a visual language meant for the spirit world, not human logic. After all, not all meaning can be decoded like a puzzle. Some is meant to be felt or feared. The mystery deepens when you consider that Judicola Rock is not alone. Scattered throughout western North Carolina and the greater Appalachian region are smaller stones with similar markings, cupules, spirals, and arcs. While none are as large or densely carved as Judicola Rock, their existence hints at a broader cultural pattern, a network of sacred sites linked by shared knowledge that has since been lost, and the rock is slowly fading. Despite efforts to preserve it, time and erosion are working against it. In the early 20th century, parts of the rock were damaged by plowing and nearby farming activity. In the 1960s, it was almost completely buried in soil and debris. Today, the rock is protected by a shelter and fencing, with interpretive signs for curious visitors. But the carvings remain vulnerable to the elements and to misinterpretation. For the Cherokee, the rock remains sacred. It is not simply a relic, but a living symbol of memory and identity. In recent years, Cherokee scholars and elders have renewed efforts to reclaim the narrative of Judiculla, recentering the spiritual meaning of the site and correcting outsider misreadings. In the end, Judicola Rock resists easy answers. It's a mirror of the human impulse to create, to remember, and to leave marks that outlast our voices. Whether it's the fingerprint of a giant god, the lost language of a prehistoric people, or a ceremonial map of time and space, it continues to speak, even if we don't yet understand the words. One thing is certain, Judicola Rock is not a forgotten artifact. It is a riddle written in stone, a reminder that long before English settlers arrived, long before maps and borders, this land was alive with meaning, myth, and mystery. The Brown Mountain Lights. High in the rugged landscape of Burke County, North Carolina, where dense forests cloak the slopes and ancient ridges rise like the bones of the earth, there exists a phenomenon that has puzzled and captivated generations: the Brown Mountain Lights. For centuries, strange glowing orbs have been reported drifting above the ridgeline of Brown Mountain, flickering, floating, dancing, only to vanish as mysteriously as they appear. They defy logic, they mock explanation, and they refuse to go away. The earliest written reports of these strange lights date back to the early 1800s, but Cherokee legends suggest the lights are much older, tales passed down long before the first European settlers arrived. According to one version of the legend, the lights are the souls of grieving Native American women, wandering the mountain in search of their fallen husbands after a great battle. In another, they are spirit guardians, protecting the sacred mountain from trespassers and defilers. But legends are only the beginning. The Brown Mountain Lights have been seen by farmers, travelers, hunters, soldiers, scientists, and tourists. These aren't just vague whispers of folklore. They are recurring, observable events. Witnesses describe lights that glow red, orange, or blue, hovering silently or zipping suddenly across the sky. Some appear as small as a lantern flame. Others have been said to light up the treetops or drift with apparent intelligence, bobbing along the mountain's edge. In 1913, the lights made national news when a U.S. Geological Survey worker named D.B. Stewart was sent to investigate. His conclusion, that the lights were nothing more than reflections of train headlights from the nearby valley. The explanation didn't sit well with locals, especially when the lights continued to appear during a period when flooding had halted all rail traffic. The government tried again in 1922, conducting a second study that concluded the lights were a mixture of man-made sources, distant vehicle headlights, brush fires, or mirages from gas lamps. But the lights didn't follow those rules. They appeared in remote areas without roads. They moved in patterns no lantern or headlight could, and they weren't consistent with atmospheric mirages. In the decades that followed, more eyes turned toward Brown Mountain. Amateur investigators camped in the woods for nights on end. Photographers set up tripods in hopes of capturing proof. Theories multiplied. Some blamed swamp gas, though the area contains no swamps. Others proposed that the lights were piezoelectric effects, caused by pressure on the mountain's quartz-rich rocks, creating a discharge of energy. The Appalachians, after all, are some of the oldest mountains in the world, and their deep geologic stresses might still release bursts of luminous energy. This theory gained traction among scientists in the 1980s and 90s, with some suggesting that shifts in tectonic plates could cause underground electric charges to ionize the air and create glowing orbs. But the conditions required are rare, and the consistency of sightings remains difficult to explain. More speculative minds have looked even further afield. Some believe the Brown Mountain Lights are extraterrestrial, UFOs, or probes from another world, monitoring human activity or drawn to the area by unknown energy fields. It's a fringe theory, but it grew in popularity after several unusual sightings were reported in the 1970s. including one case in which hunters claimed a floating ball of light followed them silently through the forest before vanishing. Still others take a more paranormal view, that the lights are ghost lights, manifestations of the dead, trapped between worlds. This idea echoes legends from other parts of the world, from the overlook on Highway 101's ridge, or from Wiseman's View, which offers a wide vantage over the Linville Gorge wilderness. And indeed, people wait. Some nights offer nothing but wind and darkness. Others reward the patient with a show of light that seems to hover just beyond the realm of understanding. One moment, a reddish orb pulses near the treetops. A few seconds later, it splits, 2 lights now, then 3, drifting slowly before blinking out in unison. The will-o'-the-wisps of Europe, the Marfa lights in Texas, or the mysterious Hessdalen lights in Norway. In each case, glowing orbs appear in rural areas, behave unpredictably, and resist scientific explanation. What makes the Brown Mountain lights so compelling is their persistence. They are not a one-time anomaly. People still see them, not every night, but often enough to remain a topic of serious curiosity. Locals will tell you exactly where to look. The phenomenon has even found its way into pop culture. The Brown Mountain lights were featured in the 2014 film Alien Abduction and referenced in The X-Files, further cementing their status as one of America's great unsolved enigmas. They've become a symbol of Appalachian mystery, an eerie thread connecting science, legend, and the unexplainable. In 2016, a team of university researchers set up time-lapse cameras and atmospheric sensors to try to record the lights under controlled conditions. They captured unusual illuminations, sudden bursts of light with no clear source. But again, the data provided no conclusive explanation. And so, the mystery remains. What are the Brown Mountain lights? Are they a natural geophysical reaction, atmospheric plasma, a spectral memory of ancient conflict, or something stranger, something not meant to be known? Perhaps that's the key. The mountain holds its secrets closely. For every photo snapped, every eyewitness account written down, there is a silence in the woods that says, you can watch, but you cannot know. The Brown Mountain lights are more than just lights. They are a living mystery, a silent performance in the darkness of Appalachia, an unanswered question that has hovered over the ridges for centuries and may continue to do so for centuries more. The Devil's Tramping Ground. Deep in the pine forests of Chatham County, North Carolina, there lies a barren, circular patch of earth, 40 feet in diameter, where nothing grows. No grass, no weeds, not even the toughest scrub brush. Locals call it the Devil's Tramping Ground, and for well over a century, this strange clearing has captured the imaginations of ghost hunters, folklorists, skeptics, and thrill-seekers alike. The stories about this place are as chilling as the ground is bare. According to legend, the devil himself comes here at night to walk in circles, contemplating how to bring more evil into the world. Over and over, he paces the circle, his clawed feet scorching the ground, and his presence so foul that even plant life dares not return. It is said that if you place objects in the circle overnight, chairs, stones, personal belongings, they will be mysteriously tossed outside the perimeter by morning. Some say they've camped there only to wake in terror, finding themselves moved a few feet away without explanation. Others tell of ghostly voices, shifting shadows, or a feeling of dread that settles over you the moment you step into the ring. Is it just folklore? Maybe. But the site is very real, and its eerie nature is undeniable. To visit it is to confront something that doesn't quite sit right with the world you know. You step into the woods off Devil's Tramping Ground Road. Yes, that's the actual name, and follow a narrow trail to the clearing. The change in scenery is abrupt. Tall trees crowd around the ring's edge like silent witnesses, while the interior remains stubbornly empty. No vegetation, no wildlife. The soil is dusty, gray, and dry, even after rain. It feels like standing inside an ancient eye, eternally open and watching. The earliest written accounts of the Devil's Tramping Ground date back to the 1880s, though the legend likely stretches further into oral history. In those early reports, the clearing was already considered unnatural, not just lifeless, but avoided. Horses would shy away from it. Campers claimed they could hear footsteps circling them in the dead of night. One 19th century tale even claimed that Native Americans feared the place, believing it to be cursed ground where spirits dwelled, though this part of the lore may have been embellished by later storytellers seeking to add depth to the mystery. Still, the phenomenon itself is persistent. Farmers who tried to till the land found their efforts fruitless. Seeds wouldn't take root, trees refused to grow, and the barren circle remained. Over the years, scientists and soil experts have taken an interest, hoping to demystify the place. Some soil tests revealed higher than normal levels of salt and minerals, which could prevent plant life from growing. Others suggest it might be due to soil compaction, years of foot traffic and human curiosity wearing the topsoil thin. There's even speculation that the spot may once have been a fire pit or campsite used by early settlers or native peoples, which would account for altered soil chemistry. Yet even with all these theories, none has fully explained why the circle remains completely bare, while the surrounding forest thrives. Compounding the mystery are the personal accounts. People who've camped overnight, especially those drawn in by the legend, often report strange experiences. Some claim to have heard whispering voices or growling noises just outside their tents. Others speak of electronic devices malfunctioning or sudden feelings of vertigo and nausea. One particularly unsettling story involves a group of friends who dared each other to spend the night in the circle. They awoke the next morning several feet from where they had set up camp, their belongings scattered just outside the perimeter, exactly as the old tales predicted. Skeptics, of course, argue that many of these stories can be chalked up to suggestion, mass hysteria, or the influence of alcohol and fear. When you go looking for the devil, they say, you're likely to find something, even if it's just your own imagination running wild. But others aren't so sure. Some paranormal investigators believe the devil's tramping ground is a kind of energetic vortex, a place where the veil between dimensions is thin. Similar sites have been documented across the world, from the suicide forest in Japan to the mysterious fairy rings of Ireland. These so-called thin places are often marked by unusual physical properties, strange electromagnetic readings, missing time, or the complete absence of flora and fauna. In this light, the Devil's Tramping Ground takes on a new kind of menace, not just a patch of dead soil, but a portal, a scar, a place where something ancient and unknowable might be pushing through. The circle becomes less of a curiosity and more of a warning. Then there are those who insist the legend isn't supernatural at all, but symbolic. The devil walking in circles, never resting, never reaching, could be seen as a metaphor for human anxiety, the cyclical nature of evil, or even the futility of trying to control forces we don't understand. Like so many folktales, it may reflect deeper truths wrapped in layers of superstition. Interestingly, the site has taken on new life in recent years as a destination for thrill seekers and ghost hunting YouTubers. Some come with EMF meters and infrared cameras. Others come with beer and bravado, but nearly all leave with the same impression. Something about that circle feels wrong. Whether it's psychological or truly paranormal is up for debate. Local authorities have asked visitors to treat the site with respect. Decades of traffic and curiosity have worn down the surrounding woods, and vandalism has occasionally marred the site. But despite the modern world pressing in from all sides, the circle remains unchanged, undisturbed, and still resistant to explanation. It's not every day you find a place where centuries of myth, science, and personal testimony collide, but the Devil's Tramping Ground is just such a place. Whether it's a geological quirk, an ancient ritual site, or something far more sinister, it has become a permanent part of North Carolina's supernatural landscape. The devil may or may not pace this ground, plotting the world's destruction. But something does linger here, an echo, a memory, a question without an answer. And it's waiting for the next curious traveler to step inside the ring. The ancient Uhari Mountains. Tucked into the central heartland of North Carolina, far from the towering heights of the Appalachian Ranges, lie the low, rolling hills of the Uhari Mountains. To most, they appear modest, even unremarkable, a quiet forested stretch of ridges rarely rising above 1,000 feet. But what meets the eye is deceiving. These worn-down slopes are the remnants of one of the oldest mountain ranges on Earth, once as tall and jagged as the Rockies, now cloaked in trees and time. The Uwharries aren't just old, they're ancient, pulsing with stories buried deep beneath the soil. Geologists estimate the Uhari Mountains began forming around 500 million years ago, in the late Precambrian to early Paleozoic era, during a time when the continents we now recognize were still colliding and tearing apart. Volcanic activity thrust up massive peaks from beneath a long-vanished ocean. What's left today, these rounded, forested hills are just the roots of those ancient volcanoes, the skeletal remains of a world-shaping cataclysm long forgotten. But while erosion has softened their profile, the mystery surrounding the Uwharries has not faded. In fact, as researchers have dug into the region's geology, archaeology, and folklore, more questions have emerged, not just about the land, but about the people who walked it thousands of years ago. Evidence of early human activity in the Uhari region goes back over 12,000 years, placing it in the Paleo-Indian period, when nomadic hunters roamed the eastern woodlands of what would one day become the United States. Projectile points, Stone tools and other artifacts have been found scattered throughout the region, especially near rivers and rocky uplands. Silent proof that the Uwharries were not just visited, but deeply inhabited. One of the most significant archaeological discoveries in the area is the Hardaway site, located near Badin Lake, close to the modern Uwharrie National Forest. First uncovered in the 1940s, it's considered one of the oldest and most important prehistoric sites in the southeastern United States. Layers upon layers of tools and debris from human habitation were found, dating back thousands of years, showing continuous occupation and usage through several major prehistoric periods. What makes this site and the Uwharries more broadly so intriguing is the persistence of human presence. These were not people simply passing through. They knew the mountains intimately. They carved trails into the ridges, mined the rocks for tools, and developed seasonal patterns of hunting and gathering that centered on the unique geography of the region. The mountains provided shelter, flint, and other resources essential to survival, a kind of ancient sanctuary. And then there's the gold. In the early 1800s, the Uwharries became the site of America's first documented gold rush, decades before California claimed the spotlight. In 1799, a 17-pound gold nugget was discovered just to the west in Cabarrus County, setting off a frenzy that spilled into the Uwharrie foothills. For a time, North Carolina was the center of American gold production, with rudimentary mines pockmarking the landscape and dreams of fortune drawing settlers deeper into the hills. Some of those old gold mines still exist, abandoned, sealed, or hidden under vegetation. They are relics of another era, when men carved deep into the mountain in search of riches, not knowing that what they unearthed was layered atop even older mysteries. Among the strangest of these mysteries are the odd stone structures found deep in the Uhari wilderness. Stacked rocks, low walls, and formations that don't appear to be the work of nature. While some may have been built by early European settlers or even Native American tribes for practical purposes, others have no clear origin or function. Some researchers and amateur historians speculate that these could be remnants of pre-Columbian contact or of unknown ancient cultures whose presence has yet to be documented. Folklore ties in heavily here. Some locals claim these structures are spiritual markers or ritual boundaries, built to align with solstices or lunar phases. Others whisper of buried treasure, hidden in the hills by Spanish explorers or outlaws, their locations marked by cryptic stone signs that only the cleverest can interpret. As with many Appalachian regions, stories of the paranormal persist too. Phantom miners, strange lights, and the sounds of hammering or voices echoing from long-abandoned shafts. The Uwharries have been described by some hikers and campers as too quiet, a place where the stillness feels unnatural, as if something ancient is watching. Then there's the Uhari trail trees, bizarrely bent hardwoods that appear to have been intentionally shaped centuries ago. Some bend sharply at 90 degrees before growing upward again, forming unusual shapes not found in typical tree growth. Experts believe these trees were bent when young by Native American tribes, possibly the Catawba or Sapani, to serve as trail markers, spiritual indicators, or guides to water sources. These living relics suggest that the mountains were not only traveled, but mapped by hand, the landscape transformed into a cultural compass. Despite the Uwharries' relatively low elevation, the terrain is rugged and unpredictable. The dense underbrush and sudden rises make it difficult to navigate without a trail, and there are still stretches of forest where few modern feet have stepped. In these pockets, it's easy to imagine an older world, one untouched by maps, where humans moved carefully and with reverence, sensing something bigger, hidden beneath the roots. In recent years, the Uwharrie National Forest has become a destination for hikers, historians, and treasure hunters alike. Some come for the peaceful trails, others come in search of the lost gold mines, still rumored to hide riches beneath rock and fern. And some come simply to walk where people have walked for millennia, chasing a connection to something far older than themselves. But for all the attention, the Uhari Mountains still guard their secrets well. Beneath their leafy canopies and time-worn ridges lies a history not fully written, a story of fire-born mountains, vanished peoples, and cryptic echoes carved in stone and soil. The ancient Uwharries are not just a place, they are a time capsule, a collapsed monument to Earth's primal violence and human endurance. And for those willing to look closely, to follow the trails and sift through the fragments of past lives, they offer something more, a glimpse into a world before time had a name. The rock walls of Rockingham County. Tucked away in the wooded hills and rural backroads of Rockingham County, North Carolina, lie the quiet remnants of a mystery that has confounded locals and historians for generations. Scattered through the forests, fields, and ravines near Reedsville are stone walls, low, winding formations made of stacked rocks, seemingly built by human hands, yet with no clear origin, purpose, or builder. To some, they are nothing more than boundary markers from colonial days. But to others, these mysterious stone alignments may be the last whispers of a forgotten civilization, far older than any settler record can explain. Walk through the back country and you might stumble across them without realizing what you found. In some areas, they're simple linear walls, just 2 or 3 feet high, stretching across ridges or following the contours of hills. In others, they form strange patterns, angles or zigzags, sometimes even enclosures that serve no obvious function. There are no gates, no signs of foundations, no nearby structures to suggest a farmstead or homestead ever stood nearby. Just the quiet, persistent presence of stacked stone, weathered by centuries, nestled in the shadow of trees. Local legend has long swirled around these walls. Some say they were built by early settlers or enslaved people as property boundaries or livestock pens. That's the mainstream explanation, practical and grounded. But this theory starts to break down the deeper you look. Many of the walls run across steep terrain, dense woods, or marshy ravines, places that would never have been ideal for farming or grazing. Others don't connect to any visible paths or homesteads, and don't seem to divide property at all. And then there's the sheer scale of some of these structures. Miles of stone, moved by hand and laid carefully, often without mortar. Why invest that kind of labor in places where no one lived? That's where the mystery deepens. Some researchers and enthusiasts believe these walls could predate European colonization entirely. In fact, similar enigmatic stone structures have been found all over the eastern United States, from New England to Georgia, leading to speculation about pre-Columbian builders. Were these ancient boundary markers, ritual paths, solar alignments, defensive lines? Nobody knows for sure. One theory suggests they may be the work of Native American civilizations, possibly the Siouan-speaking tribes who inhabited the North Carolina Piedmont region long before the arrival of Europeans. However, traditional indigenous architecture in this region typically did not involve extensive stonework. Most native structures were made from wood, earth, and bark, organic materials suited to a nomadic or semi-permanent lifestyle. But that doesn't rule out the possibility of ceremonial or symbolic constructions made of stone, especially for purposes we no longer understand. Then there's a more speculative idea, that the walls are even older, built by a lost or undocumented people. Proponents of this theory point to the lack of historical records describing their construction, even in 18th and 19th century land surveys. If colonial settlers had built the walls, surely someone would have written about the effort. But these structures seem to just appear, without fanfare, already old by the time the first farmers cleared the land. Interestingly, some walls seem to point toward geographic features, water sources, high points, or other stone outcrops. Could they be markers of sacred geography? Were they part of an ancient system of navigation? Or perhaps burial boundaries now lost to time? In some cases, people have reported magnetic anomalies near the walls, strange compass behavior, electronic interference, adding yet another layer of mystery to an already baffling puzzle. Theories multiply. Some have drawn connections to the stone wall complexes of New England, where similar low stone walls run for miles through uninhabited forest, their purpose unknown. Others note similarities to ancient constructions in Europe, such as cairns, dolmens, or boundary lines built by Bronze Age peoples. Of course, direct connection is unlikely, but the human impulse to shape the land in enduring ways may be a universal instinct, one that leaves its fingerprints across continents and centuries. And then there are the outlandish theories, whispered in late-night conversations and buried in internet forums, that the walls were built by pre-Ice Age civilizations, now erased by flood and time, that they mark ley lines, channels of Earth's natural energy, that they form constellations on the land, mirroring the stars above, part of a forgotten system of ancient wisdom. Most archaeologists dismiss these claims as pseudoscience. Intriguing, yes, but without hard evidence. Still, the questions remain. Why build walls in the middle of nowhere? Why are there no records of their construction? Why do they persist, silent and enduring, long after their builders have vanished? Today, the Rockingham County stone walls are slowly being reclaimed by nature. Moss creeps over the stones. Trees grow through and around them. Many are known only to locals, hunters, hikers, or curious teenagers who stumble across them and feel that peculiar chill of discovering something ancient and forgotten. Scholars and archaeologists have begun to take a renewed interest. Ground-penetrating radar, LiDAR scanning, and other non-invasive tools could soon shed more light on the extent and age of the walls. Perhaps they will confirm what many already suspect, that these structures are far older and more meaningful than we've previously imagined. Or maybe they'll deepen the mystery further, Because sometimes, the land remembers things that people do not. Sometimes, the past doesn't whisper, it rises, stone by stone through leaf and vine, asking questions in a language we no longer speak. Bailis Creek Petroglyphs. Before the waters of Bailis Lake filled the valleys of Stokes County, North Carolina, there lay a hidden record carved into stone, the Bailis Creek Petroglyphs. These ancient carvings, etched onto rock faces and boulders along the creek, were once visible to hunters, hikers, and those who lived close to the land. Today, however, they lie beneath the murky depths of a man-made reservoir, their full extent unknown, their secrets lost underwater. The petroglyphs were believed to be the work of prehistoric Native American cultures, possibly ancestors of the Sara or other Siouan-speaking peoples who inhabited the Piedmont region long before European contact. They likely date back thousands of years, though precise dating is difficult without in-situ examination. What makes these carvings extraordinary isn't just their antiquity, but the tantalizing suggestion that they were part of a larger, interconnected cultural landscape now buried beneath development. Reports of the Bailis Creek petroglyphs stretch back to the early 20th century, when amateur historians and local residents occasionally came upon curious patterns scratched or pecked into stone. Spirals, zigzags, animal forms, sunbursts, and human-like figures, some arranged in deliberate alignments. The designs echoed petroglyphs found elsewhere in the southeast, including those at Judicola Rock in Jackson County, but they were more elusive, more ephemeral. At the time, there was little effort to protect or study the site. Petroglyphs were often dismissed as Indian doodles or romanticized without archaeological rigor. Some carvings were defaced, others were buried during agricultural clearing. And then came the lake. In the 1970s, construction of the Belews Lake Reservoir by Duke Energy led to the flooding of large swaths of rural land, including low-lying rock formations along Belews Creek. The primary purpose of the lake was to serve as a cooling source for a nearby coal-fired power plant, not to preserve history. Local residents were relocated, and entire tracts of land, fields, homesteads, trails, and yes, petroglyph sites were submerged. Archaeologists had limited time to survey the area. A few stones were documented, sketched, and photographed before the waters rose, but no comprehensive excavation took place. The carvings were not removed or protected, they simply vanished beneath the surface. And with them, so did the answers to crucial questions. What did the petroglyphs depict? Were they maps, calendars, spiritual symbols? Were they made by a single culture, or added to over centuries by different peoples? Were they marking sacred sites, tracking celestial events, or encoding forgotten myths? Today, divers and researchers can only speculate. The waters of Bailis Lake are deep and opaque. Visibility is poor, and most of the original creek bed lies under layers of silt and sediment. Any attempt to locate the petroglyphs now would be painstaking and expensive, requiring underwater archaeology that few institutions have the resources or interest to pursue. And yet, the mystery endures. Local memory still holds fragments of what was once seen. Elder residents recall rock faces bearing intricate spirals or carved humanoid figures. Hunters remember passing by stone slabs that looked like writing. Some even claim that the petroglyphs glowed faintly in the moonlight, a folktale perhaps, but one rooted in the awe these carvings inspired. There are also persistent whispers that not all of the carvings were submerged. Some petroglyph-bearing rocks, it said, were moved to private properties or museums before the flood, hidden away or quietly stored unknown to the public. Whether this is true or not remains unclear, as records from the pre-flood period are sparse and poorly maintained. Beyond the carvings themselves, the entire Bailis Creek Valley may have held deeper archaeological significance. The region sits at a natural convergence point, where water, elevation, and access routes intersected, making it ideal for ancient settlements. Arrowheads, pottery shards, and stone tools have all been found in the surrounding hills. It's possible that the petroglyphs were only the surface of a much larger cultural tapestry, now lost beneath lake and time. The irony is that in the name of progress, electricity, infrastructure, modern convenience, we have submerged an irreplaceable link to the pre-contact history of the Southeast. This is not unique to Bailis Creek. Across the United States, ancient indigenous sites have been flooded, bulldozed, and paved over, their histories silenced. But here, the loss feels particularly sharp, because we saw the signs, quite literally, and let them disappear. Still, the carvings call to us. From time to time, in periods of extreme drought, when lake levels drop, rocks emerge that haven't seen the sun in decades. There is always a flicker of hope among local historians that one day part of the old petroglyph site will rise above water again, even if only briefly. Until then, the Bela Creek petroglyphs remain a submerged mystery, a drowned voice, a language etched in stone and swallowed by modern needs. What did those ancient hands try to tell us? Were they sending warnings, recording stories, marking the sky? We may never know. The carvings are gone, or rather they are hidden, resting beneath the quiet, reflective surface of Belews Lake, waiting for a moment when the water recedes and someone finally listens.